7 o'clock, and this is the July meeting of the Virginia-Highland Civic Association. President are board members Ferraro, Lyson, Becker, as it were from the outside.
No, it's still Becker.
Wyndham, Warren Wilkes, Fraley, Jack White, and Laura Carla. And absent, Mr. Brandenberger and Ms. Berger are away, and we have a quorum. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda that's presented?
Second.
Without objection, so ordered. And we have no police and fire reps at the moment. We will proceed right on to City of Atlanta officials. Mr. Wan, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Jack. It's good to be back. Couple of things I wanted to mention. I don't know if you heard, City Council passed a budget last month. Being the troublemaker that I like to be, I proposed an amendment at the last hearing that effectively would have encouraged, in my opinion, would have given incentives to the department heads to fill all of their vacant positions. One of the strategies we have talked about them using every year is asking for positions that they don't really intend to fill, and then they use that money to kind of act as cushion. So I proposed an amendment that would have just taken half of their trend away and just held it in escrow. If they filled all their positions, they could come to council, we'd release it and give it back. Again, I thought it would be a great incentive for them to hire the positions that we approved and really staff up to deliver the services that they promised to deliver. It got shot down. I got called out by the mayor during the final hearing, which was kind of exciting. But I estimated it's probably about $34 million that gets trapped this way every year. So it's a significant amount. I'm still committed to figure out a way to crack that nut. But if y'all have any ideas, if you've seen ways of tackling this in the private sector corporations, please let me know, because I'm not giving up on that. Second thing is, again, I want to thank the Civic Association and the neighborhood for all the work that we've done on the master plan. I've been coordinating with Jack, and it looks like we are going to try and move that forward tomorrow out of Community Development and Resources Committee. It's been a long time. A lot of work has been put into it, and I'd really just like to see that go ahead and be adopted and incorporated into the city's plan. So if you're interested in seeing how it works or doesn't work, come down tomorrow at 12:30 for the CDHR meeting. And then the big one that I really want to talk about, it looks like in city utilities tomorrow morning we're going to be debating, I don't know if we're going to vote or act on it, but at the last council meeting, Mary Norwood authored a paper and got a number of council members to sign on that would effectively amend our sidewalk ordinance in the city and repeal the part that was enacted back during the Franklin administration that puts the responsibility of upkeep and maintenance and repairs on homeowners. I'll be honest with you, I agree with the thought and in principle. I agree that it was done as a budget cutting measure, and it's at some point we do need to revert back. I'll tell you my reservations on it right now is I don't know that an exercise has been done yet to quantify what the immediate liability is, because as you I'm sure realize, a lot of people are just going to stand up and go, "City, you need to come repair our sidewalks." And unless we have a grip on that number, I'm not sure that we're in a position that we can just flip the switch back on tomorrow. Also, I also think that we need to figure out a dedicated funding source for this going forward, or a sustainable funding source. This can't be something that becomes a budget item from year in and year out. There are best practices that other cities have done. I will agree that Atlanta is one of the very few that pushes the responsibility out onto the residents and the taxpayers. So I think there are ways that we can either kind of gradually take it back or find, like I said, pair it with a permanent sustainable funding mechanism. But I'm hearing all the comments. I'm getting a lot of emails, but especially from Virginia-Highland, I think in response to the article that went out. It's great feedback. I appreciate it. Keep the ideas coming. So, and then finally, public service announcement. Next Tuesday is the primary runoff election. I know I'm talking to a crew that votes regularly, but if you voted in the primary election, it's already been 6 weeks ago, you just have to pull the same party ballot that you pulled then. But if you did not vote way back when, you can actually go vote still and pull whatever party ballot you want to pull. So if you'll help get the word out, there's some very important decisions that need to be made in advance of November's general election. So With that, I'll open up to any questions or comments y'all might have about anything.
Well, I'll be remiss if I didn't speak for Ms. Berg on the following piece. I mean, actually, I think that the exceptional effort that she put forward here only goes to prove that the current system not only doesn't work, it can't work. And it doesn't work in any other single city in the rest of the country, which led to her and Ms. Norwood's, I think, belief that there was little worth salvaging from this other than possibly bitter debate. I know you agree with this, a possibly bitter debate that could follow next year if any funding from the bond issue goes forward in it about who's going to get it and why how that got determined, and that could be very divisive and not helpful to the entire bond issue, which is something that I think many of us would like to see passed. So I certainly do hear your objections, and I know there's nobody I respect more for their financial analysis about budgets than you. So with that in mind, we'll just say this system is unworkable, and the remarkable success that Ms. Berg has really only goes to prove how unworkable it is, short of her heroic level of efforts. Oh, it's at least the fourth, and Stephanie maybe will amplify, but it's at least the fourth attempt by a board that we could find looking through voices in the last 20 years to try to do a systematic sidewalk repair, and the others all failed to have those big results. And it wasn't because the people doing them weren't smart or because the neighborhood didn't care. It was because it's almost a full-time job. So with that said, I'll hope that the current system doesn't work and can't work, and I'm convinced of that. Any other questions for Council Member 1?
Sure, can I apologize? I got to run to a Brookwood Hills meeting.
Thank you for all your
Started
help.
10 minutes.
Thank you for your help with the plan as well.
Absolutely. So we'll see some of y'all tomorrow.
Right. So we have with us another guest, one of the assistant manager of the Atlanta Fulton Library branch, and whose presence and whose chambers we sit, Madigan McGillicuddy. And Madigan wanted to tell us a bit about, as the library has done every year for 3 or 4 years, what you've particularly done with the grants that we have been able to give you. And I think that's something everybody wants to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to cover. We've got a brand new manager, Jenny Collier, and she's come from the Roswell branch, so we're very pleased to have her on board. I'm sorry she couldn't make it to the meeting today, but we're all stretched pretty thin, so she was helping out at another branch. The loss in branch hours, the loss of our budget was very, very tough for us to take. Interestingly, our circulation and how busy we were did not really decrease. So more people just come on the times that we are open. So imagine what we used to provide in 7 days of service, we now do the same thing in 5 days, and it's a lot. This branch is one of the busiest in the county. We circulate roughly twice what Central does. We're so close to Midtown. We're one of the few branches that has a fantastic parking lot, and it's so convenient, and a lot of people come here to use this location. I know with the help of Virginia-Highlands, we have, bar none, the best, largest, most comprehensive DVD collection, and particularly our collection of adult classic films and kids TV series are probably the best in the whole county, and so that's just a fantastic resource. Our new manager has started an adult summer reading program. One of the things that we used Virginia-Highlands money for this year was a free yoga program. It was free to the public, and we paid for, with Virginia-Highlands funds, a certified yoga instructor to come and do a whole yoga series here in this room. And I think that was on Thursday mornings. And it was just great. We had really great turnout. People really enjoyed it, and they clamored for it to come back. So hopefully we can get some funding to do that next year. And then we also used a lot of funding. I mentioned roll in. We purchased new chairs for our computer area. A lot of the chairs that were there were original to when this branch first opened in 1989, and they had seen some very heavy use. and they were falling apart at the seams, and people were afraid to sit in them because they'd collapse under you. And we went out and we went to Staples, we got a fantastic discount and got all new chairs for the computer area. We also got new mouse pads and just kind of spiffed that area up. A lot of people come in from the neighborhood and they don't have a computer at home, or they're not real computer savvy, and they rely on us, they rely on the library to come in and have access to that and to make it more comfortable for them was something that we're really excited to be able to do. We also used some Virginia-Highlands funds pretty much to fund our entire children's summer and teen summer reading programs. We had a fantastic lineup, a Magic Man show. We've been doing a series of craft programs every Thursday, and the money for those for the craft supplies has come from Virginia-Highlands funds. And we had a wonderful puppet show. Piccadilly Puppets came in and did a full production with the puppet stage, shadow puppets, stick and rod puppets, the whole 9 yards. It was really, really entertaining. We had a really nice turnout for that. And it wouldn't have been possible without the funds that we got from Virginia-Highlands. I thought I would just hand out, if I have it here. Oops. We did snap a few pictures, if you want to pass those around. We did snap a few pictures of summer reading. Here's our summer reading theme was Fizz Boom Read, and there was a lot of science themes. So our Magic Man came in and he did a show. Bill Packard did a show called Is It Magic or Is It Science? And he would do a magic trick and then he would do a science experiment and then try to get the kids to figure out what was what. It was really fantastic. We were able to, right around the 4th of July, make some glow-in-the-dark lightning bugs with our craft program, and Virginia-Highlands helped pay for those glow sticks, so that was great. We had a really heartwarming sidewalk chalk expo. So we went out front, we had some volunteers come help us clean up a lot of the litter and what have you that's out there, and the kids got out there and started just using chalk and using their own imagination to decorate up that sidewalk. And it was really heartwarming because there were so many people who made friends during that exchange. There were people who were new to the neighborhood who had kids the same age who were like, let's exchange numbers and have a play date. And it was just, oh, it was, as a children's librarian, it was like the most best thing I've ever seen. A few minutes after they had finished, it started to rain. And I just thought, you know what, the chalk didn't last, but I think their friendships are going to last for a lot longer than their chalk drawing. So it was really, really good. I'm really glad we had the opportunity to do it. And, you know, as the year goes on, we'll keep you apprised of how our budget looks and what we can do in terms of continuing to offer, you know, all kinds of great stuff for the community. Any questions so far?
Looks like you have one right.
Yeah, I've been coming to this library for 40 years, and a couple weeks ago when I came in, the guard at the desk asked
Yep.
to search my purse.
Yep.
And I was really, really, really put off by that.
Yeah.
And I know that she doesn't have any choice,
Yep.
but I think everybody in this room should realize, you know, just what a dangerous trend that we're on. When
Yeah.
you go to the public library and somebody asks to search your purse.
Yep.
And I asked, what are you searching for? And the woman at the counter was pretty unspecific. I know they're searching for guns,
Mm-hmm.
but the woman at the counter said, and other stuff. And I'm thinking, no way.
I'm really glad you brought that up. A lot of people have mentioned it. I will tell you, before we started doing bag checks, unfortunately we do have a lot of vagrants who are in the neighborhood who are bringing in stuff that we don't want to see in a wholesome, you know, safe for families, library kind of environment. Prior to doing bag checks, we would have to call 911 for an incident that happened at the library, whether that be, you know, someone who is drunk or on, you know, some kind of substance, whether that was for a fist fight or something of that nature. It's really sad but true. We would call 911 about 3 times a week. And maybe you don't see it because you just pop in to pick up some holds or what have you, but throughout the course of a week, that's what we were looking at. When we started doing the bag checks, it was a real deterrent, not to folks like you who are good, upstanding citizens, but to folks who are bringing weapons and drugs and what have you in their bags. they were turning around going, oh, I don't want you to even look in my bag, and they would just leave. The way HB 60 is worded, in a government building that is secure, where there are bag checks at the door, we retain the right to ask someone with a weapon to leave the premises. If we do not do a bag check, and if we don't do it fairly and across the board without profiling, but asking everyone, even really sweet people like you, if we don't do that, then people are free to bring in whatever they like. So that's a big part of the reason why we did it. And I'm sorry that we have to do it, because I'd like for us to just, you know, retain that you know, neighborhood feeling of, you know, safety and closeness. But it is something that we've had to do in this past year, and it has made a real difference in terms of the amount of crime that's been happening. So I don't know if that answers your question. Or
Well, I mean, I think you're probably going to get challenged. I mean, I think you probably can search people for guns.
It may,
But
yeah, it may.
I don't think you have the right to search people for whatever you determine is drugs or whatever.
Mhm.
And probably you're going to get in a lot of trouble there. But, you know, I think it for people like me and people who have been using the library, very disconcerting to be asked to come in here and to be searched. Very disconcerting.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
very bad trend.
yeah. And we'll see, I mean, we'll see how, as things develop and as we get adjusted and seeing how HB 60 plays out, that policy may change again. We'll just keep you posted on how that looks. But I'm very glad that you brought up the concern, because I think you're right. It does give a different feel when you're coming in the door to have someone ask to see your bag. Yeah.
Any other questions for Rennie?
Are those extra flyers of your summer adult,
Yes.
no, the adult meeting?
Absolutely, yes.
Hey, Mike, can you get me, like maybe digital copies of those pictures? I would like to, maybe in your notes from that, I'd like to maybe include that in a newsletter.
I can email it to you, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll connect you to electronically. Thanks, it was a great report. The
All right,
program
thank
sounds
you so
fantastic.
much.
Thanks for, we don't always know what folks do with our grants, but we always know what y'all do with them. So thank you
All right.
very, very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other elected officials or guests who wanted to speak to us tonight? So are you, if you need to go, lock the door and I'll give it to John, but if you, whatever you prefer. All right, let's move on to the planning committee.
Okay, so we'll start with B14-123, 571 Orm Circle, and if the applicants wouldn't mind coming forward and giving an outline of the plans, circulating anything that you need to, and introduce yourselves. Thanks.
My name's Falcon Hunter, working with David and Steve on their second-story expansion renovation, 571 Orm Circle. Here are 3 copies of the plans, kind of break down.
Just circulate one out there. I'll take one here.
And we're seeking a variance for the front yard setback and the side yard setback. From the front yard is 35 feet to 27 feet, and the east side yard from 7 feet to 2 feet. The existing home actually sits at these lines at 27 feet in the front and 2 feet on the east side. Our expansion is to happen on the second story, and we won't approach any further than the existing home. The floor area ratio for the home is 46%. We're not increasing the impermeable area.
No, you're good, you're fine.
The impermeable area at all on the lot either.
Any other impacts, trees or?
We do have, there's 14 cryptomeria planted on the east side of the property, and we will possibly have to prune 3 of them that are in our renovation area. If we do have to prune them, we'll prune them to City of Atlanta standards. We've sent out an email to the neighbor to the east, and we're still kind of started the dialogue on getting permission for it. There'll be minor pruning if we do have to prune.
Let's get the motion from the board, and we'll take questions from the board committee, please.
I'll move to recommend approval for B14 123, based on site plans which are stamped and dated on this June 9th, 2014.
All right, any comments or questions from anyone? Yes, please.
You know, the city of Atlanta has a code about pruning, you can't prune more than 20%. So let me just recommend that before you do the pruning, that you call the city arborist and make sure.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from anyone, comments? There's a motion before us, it's been moved and second to approve condition site plan dated 9/6/14. All letters have already been examined and neighbors have been notified. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it is unanimous. We'll see you next week and bring a book next week. It's a little longer than we thought.
Some of these is best.
It's no reflection on this good nonetheless.
So next is V14-134, 1089 Lanier Boulevard, and I ask the same, that the applicant come up and explain to the board and the audience the plans.
About 11 copies. Actually, only has one twice. So we are tearing off an existing stone deck. I'm sorry, my name is Matt Boots with Sawhorse, and my client is wanting to do an addition on the back of the house. So there's an existing stone deck. We're tearing that off and going to put an addition on the back of the house on part of where the footprint of where the stone deck is located. We're going to square it off. We'll also have some floor plans for you to take a look at. I'll probably have all these handed out by the time I explain what we're doing. Sorry. In the last meeting, we originally requested a 4-foot, 6-inch setback reduction from 7 feet on the side yard setback. That's the only variance that we're asking for. And I think we agreed to change it. Actually, you probably don't know this, but it would actually be 5 foot 4 inches if we go back the 12 inches, because then the house would actually be the part that would need would be the closest point to the property line. So I'm not sure if we need to change that or not in there.
Can you revise the plans? I still have the old plans, does it show the deck?
My architect's actually in the country right now, so.
Yeah, and which is fine, but they'll have to be done
Yes.
before the end of the year.
Correct. Anybody else want to? Okay.
So actually, you'll have less of a non-conformity than you were.
Yeah, so we're asking for reduction from 7, I mean, the current letter states 7 to 4.6, it'd actually be 5.4.
Since you have to go down anyway, why don't you revise it down there to what you want? I think you have to go down anyway to
Okay.
do that.
So I guess we're asking for less than
Right.
a variance, which is approved.
Good enough, good enough.
So, and we've talked to the neighbors are comfortable with it.
Do you have letters?
Yes, I do, and I think I emailed them to someone.
Did you get them? Did Karen?
If not, I just have my office manager rescan those in.
All right, we're going to keep those in the condition because we didn't see them last time. I'm sure you got them, but we didn't see them last time.
Well, I had them at the first meeting.
Is Karen?
When we went on site, I had all the tabs.
Well, I didn't see them. Okay, my bad, man. I'm sorry. We'll take a look.
Right, but I think we talked about scanning.
I think you're right. That's fine. Did you see them?
So who do I scan with?
I'll check on it and I'll.
Okay, I mean, I can
Just
take your
bring
card
them.
and give it to my office manager.
Just bring them next week.
Okay.
In any case, okay? That's fine.
So
We'll leave it in here.
Or you can, okay.
Or make sure they get some.
Any
Well,
questions?
hold on. Is there a recommendation?
Move to approve V14-134. Based on, I guess, the new site plans that are stamped and dated.
Well, it's conditioned on the site plan originally dated 6/25/14, and still says to be changed to reflect removing the deck 12 inches, boy, that was poorly written, 12 inches, I wrote it, in further into the property, putting green screening on the site plan, maintaining the stormwater on site as accepted, and providing proof of neighbor notification. Why don't we just leave all that in there, because you're doing all of that.
Yeah, we're in on that.
So the new site plan will reflect all of that. You need to have that new site plan with us to look at before the meeting next week, because we need, and it'll have a new date on it, and that's the date we'll use.
You can
With
email that to us.
With these pieces, you can send it
Okay.
by email, but you'll have to have it at the meeting.
Okay, should I email it?
Planning and bond.
Okay, okay.
So that's the motion, and I'll second it. Is there any further discussion or questions from the board? And the neighbor was quite happy, as I recall, so I think we're in good shape. Yes, ma'am?
I don't see any trees on this plan, and I know that when you submit plans to the city and to the arborist, you gotta have trees on there. So saying that the tree issues, no tree issues were observed is really not, that doesn't satisfy the code. You have to have trees on these plans. For example, if there were trees, boundary trees, they should be here, but we don't really know if they're boundary trees because there are no trees on this plan that I'm looking at. So I would ask that before you go to the MPU, that you put trees on this plan. And that they have to be by species and by size. I mean, I don't see how the board can make decisions with these plans where there are no trees
Well,
on
we can do it because the committee visited the site, and when the sentence, no tree issues were observed, it means that we observed nothing, no trees would be impacted by the proposed construction.
it. These plans that are submitted to the
Excuse me, I
arborist,
wouldn't finish, but you're absolutely correct. We do, the plans ought to show the trees, and we would appreciate it if you would amend that. On the other hand, it's not that the issue hadn't been studied, it has been studied.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm
Right.
saying that before they're submitted to you, the trees have to be on the plans. And that's the way it should be for all the trees. Now, we had this issue a couple months ago when boundary trees were not on the plans and that you all were asked to make a decision about them. And we didn't even know.
I'm not sure, Stephanie, I don't want to revisit a decision. If you're talking about the one on Highland View, I disagree with you. We did know about the plans. We had, in fact, a specific commitment from the plans. But rather than have an abstract discussion about an unnamed site discussed at an unnamed meeting, I will just say that I haven't been to a site visit with this committee in which one of the first things that happened was that everybody walk around and looks first.
That's not the issue, Jack. The issue is the plans have to have trees on them when they're submitted.
We agree with that. I'm
Thank
talking about the impact. We've already agreed to that. I'm talking about whether or not it gets examined, and I vigorously disagree that the board has no knowledge of whether or not there will be any tree impacts here. because
No,
the
that's
trees
not
are-
my issue, Jack.
Got it. I
So
agree
what
with.
I would like to suggest is that we have all trees on the plans before decisions are made. In the future, this board needs to have the trees on the plans. That's the way they're submitted downtown, and that's the way they should be submitted to you.
Well, we have the plans that are submitted downtown, I think, do we not? Are we not looking?
Yeah, this is for the variance, and I'm not even sure why the tree layer was turned off in this one, I apologize, because I'm a tree hugger myself, we're a green builder, so I'm not even.
So can we get that?
Yeah, we can turn the tree layer back on that.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your point, Stephanie. We will try to make sure that the part that goes forward contains.
But it was a tree topo survey, so I'm not sure how the trees got taken off and topo stuff.
No worries.
I apologize.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion or questions for the applicant? All those in favor, please raise your hand. So we will see you next week, and so you're going to make these changes. We'll have a new site plan dated. You can stick the tree layer on that.
Okay.
We would appreciate that.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Okay, next site is V14-117, 1221 Monroe Drive. Same request that you introduce yourselves and outline the project. Provide any of the plans that you have.
I'm Paul Dirk, I'm the homeowner. This is Martin Wright, who is helping manage the project.
So it's opposite that building.
Here's a copy of the site plan. When we spoke last Thursday, I got back with the engineer who's out of town, we spoke today, and also went to the city and spoke to the planner who's handling this.
Who is that plan? I'm sorry.
Yes, correct.
This is regarding the concerns about the runoff.
Right. And what we're asking for is a variance, because it's a corner lot, and a setback for the Amsterdam side, in order to do an addition to the house that will be in keeping architecturally and with the footprint of the existing house. I guess the main issues have arisen from, we're at 54% of lot coverage, because we had proposed doing a parking pad in the back in order to have better ingress, egress, because Monroe, right there at that corner, is so hard to get in and out of, and very, very dangerous. So that's, the new parking pad is 958 square feet. Had a long discussion with the planner today. The city is fine with the way things are, but what we have proposed, and again, getting back with you all based on what we did last Thursday, and then doing an amendment to the variance, to look at maybe doing some pervious pavers for the pad in the back, as well as some pervious pavers for the existing walkway from the house to the street sidewalk. And that's about 1,000 square feet, so it puts us back at about 44% lot coverage.
That's counting the pervious pavers as 100%?
Yeah, and the way we, and I went through this with the planner, we would actually put in about a 3-foot bed with gravel, so it actually kind of becomes a semi retention area for all the runoff, not only from Paul's yard, but from neighboring yards as well. So, and then on the plans, as we talked about, we've got 4 flow wells to take care of most of the rainwater from the new structure, and had this long conversation today with the planner. You know, the whole site is kind of, it's almost over-engineered, which is, we're fine with, but
Maybe you mentioned that 2 flow wells would be
yeah,
plenty, but we're doing double
4.
that.
I'm sorry, say that.
I think 2 flow wells were
Sufficient.
sufficient for the runoff, but we're going to do 4. So I know that there's a lot,
And, yeah, and
a lot of other
then,
yards flowing in there as well.
yeah, I think you had a conversation with the neighbor behind you
Yeah,
today.
and we talked about how much of the water flowed onto their property.
You're talking about the neighbor behind you on Amsterdam, immediately east of
Is
you.
that you?
That's, you spoke with my husband, it's very nice to meet you and welcome
He
to the
mentioned you'd be here
neighborhood.
tonight, so.
Yeah, welcome. The only question we had, I think, having not seen plans or any of that, he and I were talking about where do they go? Where will the fork go? Is it at the base of the property? Is it in the middle?
It's in the middle of the backyard. Let me show you.
Where the 4 flow wells would go? How did
Yes,
you get
yes.
copies of the plans, ma'am? What is your name, I'm sorry?
Ashley Cummings.
Yes, ma'am, did you not get a copy of the plans?
We got a notice letter on Friday afternoon. We didn't talk about any of this, and it doesn't include the plans.
I'll give you a copy of the plans.
That'd be great.
This is your yard. The flow wells are actually in the middle of the backyard.
Okay.
That's in order to prevent any type of flow coming down toward you.
What happens to the flow that's coming from the houses here that comes back along this part?
Well, we looked at doing 2 things. That parking pad, the way the papers would be designed, it's actually about a 3-foot bed gravel, so it becomes a retention area, which will help the water. And we've also looked at the idea of potentially doing like a rain garden back here, which would collect all the water too. And that would be collecting water from 4 or 5 houses to the, I guess, the south of Hall that flow that way. And we've also proposed putting in several large trees back there too to help.
So we ask that you provide us with the species and the number of trees.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't see one here at all.
There,
I just see
there's
pictures.
Those are willow boats.
Okay. And what size trees were you proposing?
They're 6 to 8 inch diameter.
4 of them?
Yes.
6 to 8?
It's very large trees, really 30 feet tall. That's presented by the pictures.
Any other, thank you for coming, Ms. Cumming. Any other questions or comments for the applicants? Sir?
I'm George Van Horn. I share the property, and
You're actually immediately south of the
Right.
applicant on Monroe.
I've got 200-foot shared property line and a shared driveway, and I would just like to see some information. You know, I haven't seen the revised drawings. The parking pad has gotten bigger from what was submitted to the planning committee last week.
But the parking pad hasn't changed.
Well, on the plan view that was submitted, it scales to about 845 square feet, and I heard 958 now. And I've got some concerns. There's nothing from the parking pad to the house, so that makes me wonder, you're just going to hoof it over the grass? I don't really care. I mean, whatever you want to do is fine with me, but my concern is lot coverage.
There's no pedestrian path.
Yes, there's no pedestrian path. I
So
would,
the way to do is to ask the question, what is the plan to get from the pedestrian, from the proposed new driveway in the rear to the, how do you propose to do that?
I'd likely walk it to the sidewalk.
So there would be a sidewalk, and that's
No, the existing
Sidewalk.
sidewalk.
Existing sidewalk.
the existing sidewalk on Amsterdam, not cut through your own backyard.
my point,
I'm sorry?
There's too many flow wells back there, I call it.
Go ahead. Go ahead, George.
well, my point is just that, I feel like I've gotten, very little information, and we're gonna be living.
We'll be happy to do a walkthrough. Matter of fact, Paul and I were over there Friday looking at some
Okay.
ideas. I know one of your major concerns is your accessibility to back in and out on the existing drive, which half of that will go away. We've looked at some ideas of maybe doing something in common on the easement back there to maybe help you with some backup and pull away. But that's just something we looked at on Saturday.
So we can discuss later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Because
it's great, I'm wide open to talk, but, I've got to tell you, until I see some details, it's kind of hard to,
What more details would you like?
well, what exactly is going to be cut of the existing concrete driveway? Where,
That which is not shared.
okay, so like 5 feet off the property line?
Actually, you'll have a lot more than that, but
Okay.
if you take a straight line and go back 27 feet from the back of the house, basically a little past where the deck is right now, all that will be part of the new addition.
Okay, that sounds great. I don't understand why that information couldn't have been shared ahead of time. That's my concern with, I feel that this is being rushed through, and there are details that are being left up in the air.
Tell me what your concerns are, and we'll
Okay.
address them right now.
Okay,
Well, I'd just like to
go ahead.
hop in here. The reason we ask that you get in touch with neighbors, go around and knock on doors, is so that we do not have these meetings at the board meeting. Because basically, we do a site visit, we do a planning committee meeting, and to try to resolve these kinds of issues is not really effective in an environment like this. And that is why the process is set up, as it is set up. So people do have the time to get comfortable, talk about particular concerns they have that probably are easily addressed.
Sure.
It's just that this is not the forum to do that. My opinion, knowing that the letters went out later and people didn't have a site plan to look at, and just had, a letter that it was happening, is I would prefer that this is deferred just so that residents around you have time to take a look, and there may be other issues that you're not aware of because somebody hasn't seen the plans to raise those issues. So that we give the processes this opportunity.
Can I just ask a question? So when people usually send out the letter, they send the plans with them, so the neighbors all see what's really gonna happen?
That's what I would prefer to see, and then we can work through a lot of these issues. And we did, when we met at the planning committee meeting, we did make a lot of comments. It sounds like you've addressed some of those, but we also haven't had an opportunity to look at those until right now. You know, the comments that we had made in the planning committee, to make sure that we feel comfortable with them, because the planning committee then makes a recommendation to the board. So, any other comments for that?
I think your intentions and your ideas are really great. I think what we're saying is that it should be on a site plan, like all together, instead of just talking about it and saying, yes, we can do that, yes, we can do that. Just having it visually in one place and a stamped and dated site plan.
I would add that I think we can get away with planting, not just get away with, you might have more success planting smaller trees. It would be easier, both less expensive, but that's not why I'm suggesting they might be more likely to survive than huge trees, which can survive. They're just going to need a great deal of effort. A 6 to 8 inch concrete tree is huge. But more to the point about the plan, actually, Mr. Bullock went through some of your flow well calculations today, and I spent a bit of time talking to Corey Rayburn about it, and I think they're pretty solid.
They are.
I think they really, and I say that because we have, I'm trying to remember, as we mentioned to you in the planning meeting, when we'd seen such a remarkable increase in site and lot coverage, and normally we would just think this is la-la land, and yet the city ordinances do contemplate this for better and or for worse. And y'all have taken them seriously and applied them well. But I do think Mr. Van Horn's uncertainty is reasonable, and it's coming, not getting the points about not getting the plans in a timely way so they can reflect on them. It's not a matter of did I get them at the land, did I barely make a deadline, but folks are not typically architects or planners, and they have to seek help and reflect and think about it. And we would much rather see this go an extra month and work to resolve them. And I assure you that we do know how I know Mr. Warren, and we will be, this is not some attempt to sandbag you by bearing you in some delay. I think that we would rather that this was done with a little more reflection and a little bit better plan, and let's get all these things on. We'll be glad to be part of that process. We'll be glad to come and sit with everybody again and try to get this on here. And I think maybe some of the challenge for the delay would be ameliorated by knowing you can save at least some money on those trees, because we had nothing, we had no
It's
intention.
actually going to cost a lot of money because of where we are in the construction phase, architects and loans and everything else. It's quite a deal of money. This is a several $100,000 project.
Yeah, I hear you. On the other hand, Mr. Wright, maybe even plainer, we, at the site visit, asked you to quickly get the plans out and go around and talk to people, and none of that didn't happen until some days after that, and didn't include the plans, and only included, to my knowledge, a couple of people being knocked on doors. So I am concerned about this, and I think Ms. Wyndham's points and Lola's points are well made. That urgency could have been better reflected by taking our advice on the site plan and on that visit and getting it out quickly. At least then, the issue of not seeing a site plan till you walk into this meeting, which is simply, in my opinion, not reasonable, and not at all. And I'm not really here to argue with you about what size trees you plant. You're planting, those are lovely trees, and they should do well there. But, and I appreciate this. We also asked for and you said you were a rain garden at the east end, which may or may not be necessary. You've got
Today, they said we probably should not do a rain garden. unless it was just something that everybody just wanted to see, because it really is not necessary with the amount of overkill we've got. Not only the flow wells, but also the way that the pad will be designed. It's complete overkill.
No, that may be so. By the way, just so you know, the city of Atlanta gives 0 credit for pervious pavements. I mean, they don't. And the reason, that doesn't mean we discourage, as we talked about in the meeting, we think they're great. It does require a commitment to broom them, stiff broom them on a regular basis to keep them pervious and occasionally to sandblast them clean, but that's their reasoning, and it's pretty sound reasoning. Nonetheless, I applaud the notion of doing them, and we have historically been willing to give partial credit in our conceptual approach to it because of the fact that it does do some good, and putting a gravel bed under it would do some good. So these are all good pieces, but we have a neighbor, we have, you know, some neighbors here that have, I think, some reasonable questions, and I'm still don't, nor do I see any. We also asked, I think, for some markings on the revised angles for the site, S-I-G-H-T, site, in the fence, and I don't see that on here. And I know these are all easily done things, and you promise you'll do them, but now we're at the Virginia-Highland meeting, after these were brought up twice, and they're still not done. And I know they could be done, and they're easily done, but they're not done. And I think that this really would benefit from a calm month spent perfecting these plans and getting them in good order and getting everybody lined up behind it. And I will just tell you, when these questions are answered, we don't entertain, we expect neighbors to respond in good order with objections, not to run in at the last second, but they've only had the last second to run in here now. This is unfortunately what they've been given, so this is not running in at the last second, it's running in the first second. And so I would love it if you could find a way and to do that. And
as Jack said too, there are a lot of good things about the plan, and there are a lot of good things about the way the house is going to look, and all of those things. You know, all of these things also affect the property values of the people around them, and so then they have that right process.
If I could just help you with the next 2 steps of the process, once you leave the Virginia-Highland meeting, and neighbors, all the neighbors in the audience from 4 neighborhoods will vote on your plans. If there's any neighbor opposition to the plan, the chances of success are nil. If that happens or doesn't happen, when you go to the BZA hearing, if neighbors go to that meeting and show any kind of opposition, there's a very good chance that the BZA will defer your case for you until those issues are resolved. So I would think that it would be much better form if you would work them out within the neighborhood, take them on to do it. Otherwise, we may end up exactly where we are at the BZA hearing, which is another 4 weeks away, 3 weeks away.
that said, you are in control of your own fate, and if you want to push forward with this, and that is really, you do not have to accept a deferral. We will, if you want us to make a decision one way or the other, we will do it, and I will tell you, as we tell every applicant, we will stand as enthusiastically as possible behind our reasoning and whatever it is. When we're with you, we will be standing there explaining why, and if we think not, we will be standing there explaining why. And you may very well win without any endorsement for us. I kid you not, you very well might. So some people have, some people haven't. So, yes ma'am.
I would just like to point out that you can save yourself some money. You either pay recompense or you pay for trees. And if you're planting 6 to 8 inch one oaks, you don't have to pay recompense.
Exactly, it's deferred.
Okay.
They know that because they had recompense on the check, and
Okay, they say they're gonna pay recompense.
yeah, no,
Okay.
no, that was, before we saw this, that's what the plan was. Anyway, it's y'all's choice, so
Okay.
why don't y'all let us know what you want.
Let me collect this down.
You want to take a few moments to talk about that? Please, yes, go ahead. We'll in a minute. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks very much. Good to see you again, Paul. Let's go ahead with the agenda while pending their things. Thank you all both for coming, appreciate it. So let's move on to, we heard it briefly, the master plan update from Alex. I think that's ready to go. I want to talk about the Monroe Drive traffic planning, traffic calming, and Music Midtown, which is awaiting us. Ms. Keenan, can you begin with the traffic issues on Monroe?
Yes, we had a meeting probably about a month and a half ago now with some neighbors on Elmwood. And the meeting was to discuss cut-through traffic from Monroe to the streets that run off of Monroe. So it was Coolidge, Crest Hill, Elmwood, and Park. And the increased traffic and speed that have been seen on those streets with the backup on Monroe. The neighbors on two of the streets in particular, Crest Hill and Elmwood, are working through us with a traffic consultant to identify ways to slow down traffic and perhaps address cut-through. And the best way to impact the cut-through traffic on the side streets is to improve Monroe. Traffic flows more smoothly on Monroe. People aren't going to need to cut through on the smaller streets. So we have been working with that, and we're doing some counts related to parking on the streets to see if there are measures that can be put in place that wouldn't have a significant impact on the streets that would take away some parking. So there are bulb outs and different options that you can put on the street to help slow down traffic. There's one thing that has been pending for probably 3 months now, Jack, and I still haven't heard the latest, but we have had discussions about putting a right turn arrow from Monroe onto 10th. So when the left turn arrow is going from 10th to Monroe, right now the right turn is just stopped. So if there were a simultaneous arrow to allow traffic to go right while the people are turning left onto Monroe, that might alleviate some of the backup on Monroe. We were told probably 2 months ago that that's happening next week type of thing. So this is reminding me that we need to follow up on that because there are some short-term things that can be done almost immediately to help Monroe, and then there are the longer-term plans. But it seems like one quick fix, perhaps, is at least putting on that turn arrow so people can turn right while the cars are turning left. On a related note, we're also exploring a study or funding a study to analyze the impact of Music Midtown on the surrounding neighborhoods. Music Midtown is growing every year in scope, and the impact is becoming more and more dramatic on the neighborhoods. So what has been proposed is building a coalition of surrounding neighborhoods to help fund a impact study related to Music Midtown. The primary impact would be traffic and parking, but also sound would also be analyzed to see if the concert is complying with the city's policies related to sound. So the proposal is to have Midtown, Virginia-Highland, Midtown Alliance, which is the Midtown Business Coalition, perhaps MPUF, and maybe another surrounding neighborhood, maybe Morningside, basically whoever would want to join in and help fund this study so that we can have data on the impact of Music Midtown. And when we have that data, we'll then be in a better position to advocate for changes for future concerts and future big events. The good thing is the data will be helpful for other big events, Dogwood Festival and all of those things as well. We are in the process of reaching out to all those constituents to try and get funding, because it is not a project that Virginia-Highland can fund on its own. We would need some support from our fellow neighborhoods.
Yes.
You know, it used to be that Piedmont Park was so overused that they set up a system to only have so many events during the year. And all of a sudden, that seems to have disappeared. I mean, I think it's great. You know, of course, my concern is the impact on the trees primarily. The turf you can replace, you can't replace the trees. And I just wonder why has Piedmont, it seems like the Piedmont Park Conservancy is just kind of, you know, open the doors to everybody. And I just wonder what has happened with, you know, this kind of concern for limiting events. Do you know, has anyone talked about that?
Well, the Conservancy would be the last element of the group, the only group that I think Jennifer didn't mention would be them.
You remember that, Jack,
No,
right?
I do remember. I think they do not feel that they are in control of their own fate, but the real point is that would be one of the things we'd like to say. This challenge is that this is an anecdotal challenge at this point. I went to a meeting that Mary Norwood convened on the topic with a wide array of city officials and the mayor's office of special events, 3 or 4 police officials, several planners, Park Atlanta, parking enforcement, and a bunch of others. And it was a distressingly anecdotal discussion with that very little tangible reporting, not even agreement about how many people came to these events. It was obvious to me that this situation benefits the people doing it because there's just no basis upon which to make any rational decisions. And that's what led to our thinking that we need a real study, that we would have to pay actual professionals to measure a number of parameters on a number, and that we've got about a month and a half to get ready for that. We don't have the money to do everything we like, so we're trying to put together the labs and errands trying to help do that. I think we decided at the planning committee we would like the board to agree to authorize a figure not to exceed $7,000 as our part of it. And I say that knowing that of the groups we just mentioned, the Midtown Alliance is the group that's most likely to have the cash to match to get in there with us. The others are not cash well off. But this would enable us to potentially do a form of a traffic study, ideally partly to help this year, but partly to measure what happens this year so we can argue better for controls next year, and partly to begin an analysis of the noise ordinance. We're not interested in closing the festival. That's a good thing because it'll never happen. But we do think that the current, no idea how loud the noise is, nobody measuring it, nobody knowing, and nobody caring leads to repeated and years of complaints with no basis to change. Yes, Jenny?
Quick question, have we reached out to Ansley too?
They were at the meeting. Ansley doesn't feel very impacted, but we will reach out to them. I did want to stop. Did y'all have a decision for us?
Yes, and we've decided to take the next few weeks to kind of tighten everything up, and then we'll revisit it.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. We really meant the work you did, which is a very interesting, really an interesting proposal, and a lot of good thought has gone into it. So if we can do this, I'll be in touch. We'll all be in touch. When Lola's out of town for a week or a couple of weeks, so I think Jess and I will be in touch with you quickly to try to talk about some specifics and make sure the neighbors get brought into a little. We'll settle all this stuff. We'll come back ready to roll.
Sounds good. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Good to meet you. Glad to have you in the neighborhood. Thanks very much. Thank you all for coming. So back now to Monroe. So that was what the planning committee, did I recall that correctly, not to exceed? So I'm going to make that as a motion. And that is not a commitment that we'll spend the money, but I don't want to go into these meetings saying we don't know what we could spend. We really like this to be something possible and something doable and something tangible. And that doesn't mean it'll get spent. We're negotiating with a couple of folks and trying to figure out who could do this in a way, and it needs to be people like Joel Mann, who we hired from Nelson Nygaard, who was part of Aaron's study, Nelson Nygaard being a prominent traffic consultant that was used by the Beltline, so they have city cred already, and Joel is consulting on the neighbors on Monroe So we're trying to figure out what we can get done in a way that will enable us to do it. I will just say publicly, to my astonished amazement, that the best, most informed, diligent city employee in the room, without talking about Ms. Norwood, was Ebony Varley from the Mayor's Office of Special Events, who's been to NPUN.